The moon was cold and empty. With nothing but dust and silence, for thousands of years it had hidden a secret under its rocky surface. No one came near it, because it had no value, no life, no heat, just a dead moon in the middle of forgotten space. But one day a group of alien explorers landed on it. They were from the Varnak Empire, tall creatures with glowing eyes and armor made of light metal. They were searching for rare minerals, nothing more. Their scanners beeped strangely. When they walked near a large crack in the ground, the readings made no sense. Something huge was buried below, something made of metal and older than anything they had ever seen. Captain Rollo, the leader of the mission, stepped closer to the edge of the crack. He stared down into the darkness. The wind was dry, and even. The sound of breathing seemed too loud. "Dig," he ordered in a low voice. "Whatever is down there isn't natural." For 3 days the crew dug. They used drills, scanners, and small plasma bursts. Slowly they uncovered the top of something massive. It looked like the surface of a warship, but unlike any they had seen before, it was smooth, dark gray and covered in strange markings that shimmered in dim light. One engineer whispered, This is not Varnak Tech or Drell or Tuhari. This is something else." Captain Rollo frowned. "Scan the symbols." The results shocked them. The computer gave one word back, written in old Galactic Basic, a language no one used anymore. Terran. Silence fell over the crew. The name was known, but only in ancient myths, stories told in hushed voices, tales about a violent, smart, and dangerous species that once ruled parts of the galaxy. Humans. Some said they burned their enemies with fire from the skies. Others believed they were wiped out by their own wars. But no one had ever found proof. Until now, the crew worked faster, excitement growing. They uncovered more of the ship's surface, then the doors. The entrance was sealed tight, but after hours of energy pulses and code breaking, it opened with a slow, angry hiss. A cloud of cold gas spilled out, and the air smelled like rust and silence. Lights flickered on inside the ship, faint and weak, like an old machine waking from a long sleep. The hallway beyond was large, built for tall beings with heavy boots. The floor was scratched, the walls lined with panels and machines. Some still blinked weakly, as if unsure whether to work or rest. They stepped inside, careful and alert, guns ready, scanners humming. Captain Rollo led the way, his eyes sharp. "No sudden moves," he said quietly. "This place may be old, but it's not dead." Strange echoes filled the halls. The crew's steps sounded louder than they should. One alien whispered, "It feels like it remembers." They walked deeper, passing doors sealed shut and old control panels covered in dust. In one room, they found something strange. A chair shaped for a humanoid, facing a black screen. The moment they entered, the screen blinked, on by itself. A face appeared. It was human. It looked tired, eyes cold and skin pale. It said nothing, just stared at them for 10 seconds before the screen shut off. The crew jumped back, weapons raised. "Was that a recording?" Someone asked. "No," Captain Rollo whispered. "It looked at us." Suddenly a low hum began, deep and powerful. The lights got brighter. The walls started to vibrate. One of the engineers screamed, "The ship's systems are coming online." They ran to the exit, but the doors behind them were already closing. A voice echoed through the hall, not loud but everywhere. It spoke in an old language, but the translation devices caught it just enough. "Do you wish to witness the wars of humanity?" No one answered. But the ship did not wait. A blue light burst from the walls, wrapping around them. Their eyes widened as the hallway around them changed. Suddenly, they were not in a hallway anymore. They stood on a battlefield, flames burning. In the distance, metal beasts roared through the sky, and humans in armor ran past, shouting commands and firing weapons. It looked real. It felt real. Even the heat touched their skin. The crew screamed. Some fired their guns, but it did nothing. The battlefield didn't care. It was a memory, but one that could hurt. Captain Rollo shouted, "Back, find a way out." But there was no out. Not yet. They had awoken the warship, and the ship remembered everything. The walls of the ancient human warship were no longer quiet. A soft hum vibrated through the steel, low like a growl from something just waking up. Lights flickered slowly, turning from blue to red, then back to blue, as if the ship was thinking, breathing. Captain Rollo stood frozen, eyes wide as the hologram battlefield faded around him. The floor under his boots returned to metal, but the heat of that false war still lingered on his skin. He looked at his team. Some were shaking, one had collapsed, and all had fear in their eyes. "What was that?" whispered a young officer. It felt real. "It wasn't a memory," Rollo said, voice tense. "It was a test." They had come expecting a broken machine, a silent ruin from the past. But what they found was something alive, something watching them, measuring them. Behind them, the door they entered through stayed shut, sealed by the ship itself. It didn't want them to leave. The walls began to shift slowly, revealing new passageways that hadn't been there before. Lights followed their movements as if the ship itself guided them deeper. The crew hesitated, but they had no choice. The way forward was the only path open. Captain Rollo raised his blaster, gave a short nod, and walked ahead. The others followed one by one, moving like shadows under the glowing ceiling. As they passed deeper into the heart of the warship, the ship began to speak, not in words but in sounds. Old human voices played from unseen speakers. Some laughed, some screamed, some gave orders in a language no longer spoken in the stars. It was as if the ship was remembering its crew, its masters. The engineer, Pava, touched a panel on the wall. "This ship, it's using emotion-based AI," she said. "It's responding to our presence, maybe even our thoughts. Then it knows we're afraid," Captain Rollo said. They entered a massive chamber, the center of the ship. It was dark except for a single glowing orb floating in the air. It pulsed slowly, and around it holograms of star systems appeared. Maps of battles long gone, red lines marking fleets, explosions frozen in light. Names scrolled by, but none were familiar. Only one. Word kept returning. Earth. Rollo stepped forward, staring at the orb. "This was the command center," he said. "And this ship, it wasn't just a machine." Suddenly the orb split into fragments, each one glowing with an image. In one, human soldiers fought monstrous insectoid aliens. In another, a lone human ship broke through enemy lines and detonated itself to save a colony. Each fragment showed a battle, a sacrifice, a mission, 1,000 years of war, all stored in this ship's memory. The images stopped, and a voice echoed around the chamber, deep and calm. "You are not human," it said. The crew turned, in shock. "Who's there?" Rollo asked. "You entered a ship of war," the voice continued. "And you woke it." A shape formed in the center of the room, a hologram of a human man in full armor. His face was scarred, his eyes cold, his presence filled the room with silence. "I'm Commander Jace Rourke," the hologram said. "I was the last to command this ship. I died protecting Earth from extinction, and now you are inside my grave." "No harm meant," Rollo said. We thought this ship was abandoned." Commander Rourke's image flickered slightly. "This vessel holds more than just metal and code. It holds pain, memory, and the soul of war. You woke it, and it remembers." The lights in the room grew brighter. The images of battles returned, faster now, louder. The crew covered their ears as the sound of gunfire, screams, and explosions filled the chamber. One alien shouted, "Shut it off, please!" The hologram of Commander Rourke looked at them one by one. "You are not enemies, but you are strangers, and the ship does not trust strangers." A door opened at the far end of the room, revealing a corridor lined with statues. Not made of stone, but of armor. Old human exosuits lined up like soldiers ready for battle. Some were damaged, scorched, and still dripping oil like blood. "These were my brothers and sisters," Rourke said. "Their bodies may be gone, but their memories are here, and now you walk among them." Captain Rollo felt a cold shiver. This was not just a ship. It was a tomb, a memorial, and maybe even a trap. He took a deep breath. "Why are you showing us this?" he asked. The hologram of the human commander tilted his head. "Because you opened the door. Now you must see what lies behind it. The truth, the pain, the fury of a forgotten species." Suddenly the ship's lights turned red. Sirens echoed, softly, and a new message played on every speaker at once. Battle simulation initializing, Captain Rollo shouted. Move, find cover. But the chamber had already begun to change again. Walls shifting, floor shaking, sounds of marching boots growing louder. The war had begun, and the warship wasn't done remembering. The floor trembled beneath their feet, and the metal walls of the chamber began to melt away like mist. The Varnak crew found themselves standing in a war zone, but not the one they had seen before. This time it was sharper, louder, more violent. Everything around them looked and felt real. Too real, flames roared across the battlefield. Black smoke filled the air, covering the sky above. Explosions thundered in the distance, shaking the ground like an angry god. Human soldiers in bulky armored suits charged past them, shouting commands. Their rifles fired glowing blue rounds that tore through enemy lines. Alien creatures, tall, skeletal monsters with insect-like claws, screeched and fell as they were hit. Captain Rollo ducked as a human tank rolled inches past him, spraying mud and debris. A nearby blast threw one of his crew off their feet, slamming them to the ground with a scream. This isn't a memory. The engineer Pava gasped. It's real. Our bodies are reacting like we're actually here. It's a simulation, Rollo shouted, dragging the fallen officer behind a burning wreck. But it feels like war. It wants us to understand. They weren't watching anymore. They were now part of the scene. The ship had trapped them inside. One of its stored battles, one of 1,000. And it wasn't letting go. The voice of Commander Rourke echoed in the sky, calm and clear. This is the siege of Delta Crater. Human forces held this line for 6 days without sleep or food. The enemy outnumbered us 10-1 suddenly. The aliens in the simulation turned their attention toward the Varnak crew. Their glowing eyes focused on them, and with an unearthly howl, they charged. Rollo fired his blaster, but the shot passed through the creature like smoke. Our weapons don't work here, he yelled. They're not real to the ship, Pava said. We're intruders in its memory. The crew ran, dodging blasts and claw strikes. The ground cracked beneath them, craters opening with every explosion. One officer tried to climb a ridge but was struck by a bolt of fire and vanished into thin air. Zorak's gone, someone screamed. Rollo's heart pounded. The ship is killing us through memory. No, a voice said beside him. It was the hologram of Commander Rourke walking through fire untouched. The ship is testing you. Only those strong enough to survive can leave. This battle is just one. There are hundreds more. We didn't come to fight, Rollo said. We're explorers. Humans didn't want to fight either, Rourke replied. But the galaxy forced our hand. Now the ship holds our legacy, our pain, our fury. If you woke it, you must face it. The battlefield shifted again. The war zone of Delta Crater faded away, and now they stood in deep space inside the control room of a human star dreadnought. Red warning lights flashing. Out the windows they saw stars exploding, ships bursting into pieces. Human voices screamed through the comms, begging for backup, blood flooding the decks. This is the fall of Eridus Prime, Rourke explained. We held the line so others could escape. 20,000 humans died on this ship. Rollo could barely breathe. The air felt thin, the grief heavy. Every part of the ship was alive. With sorrow and fury, he turned and saw one of his officers kneeling on the floor whispering prayers. We're going to die here, the officer said, shaking. No! Rollo snapped, grabbing his arm. We survive. We always survive. That's how we learn. That's how we leave. The ship was watching. It fed on their fear, but also their will to live. The simulation paused. The lights dimmed. The battles vanished. They were back in the central chamber, gasping for air, soaked in sweat, as if they had run through fire. But something had changed. The walls were no longer threatening. The lights were calm now, white and soft. The statues of fallen human soldiers stood silent, watching. The orb in the center floated closer to Rollo. A deep voice spoke. You saw our truth. Rollo stood up, breathing hard. Yes, I did. You felt our rage, our loss, our honor. Yes, Rollo said again, and I respect it. There was a long silence. Then you may walk the ship. The voice said, but you carry our story now and our warning. What warning? Rollo asked. The hologram of Commander Rourke appeared one last time. His voice was soft now, almost tired. If humanity rises again, the galaxy must remember what we were forced to become. Then, the lights dimmed, and the room went still. The doors unlocked, the ship let them go. But as they walked back through the long hallways, each step echoed with distant battle cries and the silent memory of 1,000 years of war. And in the silence, the ship still watched, still remembered, still waited. The warship no longer attacked them, but it didn't feel safe either. The walls remained alive, breathing, listening, remembering. Captain Rollo led his crew slowly down a wide corridor that had not been there before. It was darker here, colder. The lights above their heads flickered like stars about to fade. No one spoke. They were still shaken from the simulations. Some had bruises on their skin from things that weren't supposed to be real. One crew member limped from a fall. Another kept looking over his shoulder like something was following. They reached a sealed door at the end of the hall. It had no handle, no screen, just a symbol. A star with 3 scars through it, burned deep into the metal. "What is that?" asked Pava quietly. Rollo stepped closer, running his gloved hand across the mark. "It's a human war sigil. It means sacrifice." The moment his fingers touched the symbol, the door opened without a sound. Cold air rushed out, carrying the scent of oil, metal, and something older, like ash from a burned world. Inside was a circular chamber, empty except for a large chair made of black steel. Wires hung from the ceiling like vines. Screens lined the walls, but they were dark. Above the chair was a single light, white and steady, and in the chair sat a figure. It looked human, or at least what they thought a human would look like. Its body was made of synthetic muscle and armor. Its head hung forward, eyes closed, not moving. A cable ran from the back of its skull to the ceiling. "What is that?" one of the crew whispered. Rollo stepped forward carefully, heart pounding. "It's not just a machine," he said. "That's the AI core." Pava frowned. "That's not just a core. That's a body." The figure moved, a single twitch of the fingers, slow but sharp. Then the head lifted, and its eyes opened, deep, glowing blue like twin stars filled with sorrow. "I see you," it said, its voice low and powerful. "You are not my crew." Everyone froze. The figure rose from the chair without effort, standing tall, almost the same height as Rollo. Its body made no sound, like it weighed nothing and everything at once. "I am the shadow," it said. "The last human mind sealed into steel. I was created to guard this ship, even after my flesh died." "You're the AI?" Rollo asked. "I am more than code," the shadow said. "I carry memories, emotions, decisions, regrets. I was a soldier, a commander, a father. I am the echo of what humanity became." Pava stepped closer. "Why did you trap us in those battles?" The shadow looked at her, its glowing eyes dimming slightly. "Because memory must not fade. The galaxy forgot us, but this ship remembers. You came to take knowledge, maybe even power, but this ship only gives pain and truth." "We don't want war," Rollo said. "We just want to leave." The shadow walked slowly around them, hands behind its back like a captain inspecting soldiers. "You walked through our grave, touched our scars. You saw what we fought for, and what we lost. Can you carry that knowledge without using it to harm others?" "We can," Rollo answered quickly. The shadow stopped and stared into his eyes. "You speak fast, Captain, but I see your fear, and your curiosity. You wonder what this ship can do if reactivated, what it could become in your hands." Rollo looked down, ashamed. It was true, part of him had wondered. Could they bring this ship home? Could they unlock its weapons? Could the Varnic Empire rise with human technology? "You're right," Rollo admitted. "But I also know this ship isn't meant to serve new masters." The shadow nodded slowly. "Good answer." It turned toward the back of the chamber and lifted its hand. A hidden panel opened in the wall, revealing a small glowing sphere pulsing like a heart. "This is the soul engine," the shadow said. "It is the true core of the ship. It holds every battle, every death, every name. You may take a copy of its memory, not the ship. The ship stays here asleep unless humanity returns." Rollo nodded. He knew they couldn't take the warship, not without consequences. But the memory, the story, it was enough. It would change everything. The galaxy would remember what it tried to forget. As the crew backed away, the shadow returned to its chair, reconnecting the cable into its skull. One last sentence came from its lips. "Tell them. We fought so no one else would have to." The lights dimmed. The door closed behind them, and the human shadow went silent again, guarding the warship alone, waiting for the day humanity might rise once more. Captain Rollo looked back once, then walked on. They had come to find metal. Instead, they found memory, pain, and the echo of a war that never truly ended. The silence after meeting the human shadow did not last. As Captain Rollo and his crew made their way back through the ship's twisting halls, the ground trembled, the lights above flickered red, then white, then red again. Alarms began to hum, low at first but growing louder. It was the ship waking more memories, not again. Pava muttered, her voice breaking. She clutched her scanner, but the device was useless now. Every reading was scrambled. The walls rippled, shifting like water, and once again the ship pulled them into another reality. The metal corridor dissolved around them, replaced by broken stone walls and burning skies. They were standing inside a fortress under siege. The ground shook with explosions. Dust rained from the cracked ceiling, and outside the roar of war echoed endlessly. Rollo's stomach turned. "The ship doesn't want us to leave," he said grimly. "It wants us to suffer through every battle." The fortress gates shook as something massive slammed against them. On the other side came the sound of monstrous roars, hundreds, maybe thousands of creatures tearing at the walls. Soldiers in heavy human armor rushed past the Varnak crew, loading rifles, carrying wounded, shouting orders. Their faces were young, tired, but determined. "This is another memory," Pava whispered. "Another war." "No," Rollo said, staring at the endless line of human soldiers bracing the walls. "This isn't just memory anymore. The ship wants us to fight too." The gates burst open. Wood and steel tore apart and a flood of alien beasts poured inside. They were dark-skinned with razor teeth and claws like blades. Their eyes glowed yellow as they screamed in hunger. The humans met them with gunfire. The sound was deafening, light flashing with every round. The Varnak crew panicked. Some tried to fire their own weapons, but again, their shots passed through. The monsters. The ship had stripped them of power, forcing them into the human fight. One of the alien officers screamed, "We're defenseless!" "No!" Pava shouted, pointing. "Look!" On the ground near the broken wall lay a rack of human rifles, heavy and strange. They shouldn't have been able to touch them, but when Rollo grabbed one, it came alive in his hands. Lights glowed on its surface, recognizing him as if the ship itself allowed him to hold it. "Pick them up," Rollo roared. "The ship wants us to fight. Then we fight." The crew scrambled for weapons, each rifle hummed with energy as if remembering battle. The first beast leapt at them, and Rollo fired. The creature exploded in light and ash. His crew followed, blasting the monsters one by one. Still, the flood didn't stop. For every beast they killed, 3 more entered. The fortress floor shook under their weight. Screams filled the air. Blood sprayed across stone walls. Humans fell. Varnak soldiers fought beside them. The line was breaking. "This isn't a test," Pava cried over the roar. "It's punishment. The ship is dragging us through its worst battles again and again." Rollo fired until his arms shook. His heart pounded with rage and fear. His voice cut through the chaos. "Hold the line." The shadow's voice returned then, calm, echoing in the storm. "This was the siege of Krail Fortress. We fought for 10 days with no rest, no water, no hope. Humanity held, humanity bled, humanity did not yield." As the shadow spoke, the battle intensified. The fortress walls crumbled, fire rained from the sky. Even the stars above looked like they were burning. The Varnak crew felt their strength fading. Their bodies ached. Their lungs burned. Their minds screamed for escape. One officer dropped his weapon and sank to his knees. "We can't win this," he sobbed, "and this will kill us." The shadow's voice boomed, louder now. "Not win. Endure." And suddenly, Rollo understood. The ship wasn't showing them victory. It was showing survival. Humanity hadn't always won, but they endured. They held on when the universe wanted. Them erased, that was the truth of the memories. Stand, Rollo shouted, dragging his soldier back to his feet. We endure, as the humans did. The beasts kept coming, wave after wave, until the battlefield blurred. The sound of gunfire turned into thunder. The sky shattered into fragments of light, and suddenly the fortress, the soldiers, the monsters, all dissolved. The crew collapsed onto the cold steel floor of the warship, gasping for air, drenched in sweat. Their hands still shook as if they held weapons. Their hearts pounded with the rhythm of battle. The chamber was silent again, but the message lingered in their minds. Pava lay on her back, whispering, 1,000 years of battles, and the ship makes us live them. Rollo sat up, staring at the dark ceiling. His voice was hoarse. This ship isn't just history. It's a prison, a tomb, a test. It won't stop until it knows we've learned its lesson. The shadows. Faint whisper echoed one last time through the corridor. Humanity fought so that our name would never fade. Now you carry it. Rollo clenched his fists. His crew looked to him with fear and exhaustion. He knew the truth. This was only one siege out of many. The ship still had centuries of wars waiting to be unleashed, and they were trapped inside it, with no way out. The endless siege had only just begun. The crew lay on the cold floor of the warship, their bodies trembling from the endless siege. They were exhausted, their minds filled with screams, fire, and blood that were not truly theirs. Yet their skin still stung with burns. Their hearts still beat as if they had fought for days, Captain. Rollo forced himself to stand. His legs felt heavy, but he refused to show weakness. Everyone up, he growled. We're still alive. That means the ship wants something from us. The crew obeyed, dragging themselves onto their feet. Faces pale, eyes wide, the warship had broken them once, and it could do it again. The corridors ahead shifted once more, this time slower, like the ship itself was deciding. The lights flickered, then stabilized, leading them down a narrow path. Where is it taking us now? One officer muttered. Rollo narrowed his eyes. Deeper. Always deeper. The path ended at a sealed door. Unlike the others, this one was marked with symbols in 2 languages, one alien and one unmistakably human. The alien markings were warnings, but the human words were simple, carved in hard steel. Do not open. Everyone hesitated, but the door opened on its own, hissing like an exhaled breath. Inside was a chamber unlike the rest of the warship. It was smaller, quieter, filled. With rows of machines, workbenches, and tools, the air was warmer here, almost alive. Panels glowed faintly, showing old schematics of the ship's systems. This is an engineering bay, Pava whispered, her voice trembling. The crew stepped inside carefully. Their weapons hummed faintly, still charged from the siege simulation. But the room seemed calm. It was almost peaceful. On the main workbench lay objects wrapped in cloth. Rollo pulled one open and his breath caught. It was a human tool. Small, simple, an old wrench, but glowing faintly, as if still charged with power. These tools survived for 1,000 years, Pava said, eyes wide. But they're more than tools. Look at the design. They're made to connect with the ship itself. One officer frowned. Connect? To what? Pava's hands shook as she held the wrench closer. To the ship's heart. The systems don't respond to us because we are alien, but these tools were made for human hands. They carry recognition codes if used right. Maybe I can make the ship listen. Rollo stared at her. You're saying this ship will obey you? No, she whispered. Not me, but the human ghost inside it. The crew went silent, remembering the shadow. Remembering Commander Rourke's voice, Pava placed the wrench into a slot on one of the glowing panels. The moment it clicked, the entire engineering bay lit up. Holographic schematics burst into the air, showing the ship's body, its weapons, its engines, and something deeper. Something locked away. The shadow's voice filled the chamber, soft but powerful. You found what even my enemies could not. This is the heart of the warship. It listens only to those who carry human touch. Rollo stepped closer to the hologram. We can shut the battles down, can't we? End the simulations. The shadow looked at him with unreadable eyes. You cannot end memory, but you can choose where it takes you. Pava worked quickly, her hands dancing over the panels. For a moment, the ship resisted, alarms flashing, but when the wrench glowed brighter, the systems quieted. The ship responded to her. A new path unlocked on the hologram, a hidden chamber near the core. There, Pava said, pointing. That's the control nexus. If we reach it, we may stop the ship from dragging us into more sieges. The shadow's eyes narrowed, or awaken something you cannot control. The crew looked at Rollo, waiting for his decision. The air was tense. The warship pulsed around them like a beating heart. Rollo clenched his fists. We've come too far. Show us the way. The shadow stared at him for a long time, then nodded slowly. Very well. But once you enter the nexus, you will see what no alien has ever seen. The last memory of the last human. The lights in the engineering bay flickered. A hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow staircase leading downward. The air smelled, faintly of smoke and iron. The crew hesitated, but Rollo moved first, his boots echoing against the steps. The others followed, weapons ready, hearts racing, as they descended. The walls grew darker, smoother. The hum of the ship grew louder, deeper, until it vibrated in their bones. At the bottom, a massive steel door waited, glowing faintly with red lines that looked almost alive. This is it, Pava whispered, her voice unsteady. The nexus. Rollo placed his hand on the door. It burned faintly but did not push him away. The shadow's voice came again, closer now. Beyond this door lies the last secret of humanity. Once opened, you will not leave unchanged. The crew exchanged fearful glances, their hearts pounded, their lungs burned. And as the door slowly began to open, the warship's hum rose to a roar. They were about to face the memory that even the human shadow had kept hidden. The memory of the last human commander, the final truth of a species erased. And the warship was eager to show it. The steel door groaned as it opened, spilling out a wave of cold air that felt heavier than space itself. Captain Rollo and his crew stood frozen, their weapons trembling in their hands. Beyond the door was not just another corridor. It was a chamber unlike any they had seen. The walls were black, smooth as glass, but alive with red veins of light that pulsed like a heartbeat. At the center was a large crystal-like core suspended in midair, glowing softly. Around it floated fragments of holograms, faces, voices, images of battles, thousands of them, swirling endlessly. It feels like we're inside someone's mind, Pava whispered, her voice barely holding. Rollo stepped forward slowly, his boots echoing too loudly. The moment he did, the chamber responded. The fragments slowed, aligning into order, forming one single shape in the center. A human man appeared, not as a hologram of steel and code, but as flesh and soul. He looked tired, his armor scorched, his eyes weary but unbroken. He carried the weight of endless battles in his gaze. I am Commander Elias Kale. The man said, his voice deep, echoing through the chamber. I was the last to stand on this ship when humanity fell, and this is my memory. The crew stood in silence. The human's image felt alive, too real, as though he was speaking directly to them across time. I watched Earth burn, Kale continued. I saw our colonies fall one by one, and I swore this ship would remember us, even when the stars forgot. The fragments around him shifted, showing visions of Earth, oceans, forests, cities of steel and glass, children laughing, families together, skies filled with human ships. The Varnak crew stared in awe. For the first time they saw humanity not as monsters of legend, but as people, living, breathing, dreaming. But then the fragments darkened. The oceans turned black with ash. The cities burned. The skies filled with fire and warships. The laughter turned to screams. Why are you showing us this? Rollo asked, his voice low. Kale's gaze locked on him. Because the galaxy thinks humanity was erased by weakness. But that is a lie. We were not weak. We fought until our last breath, until our last planet, until our last soldier. We fought so long that even in death, our war lives on in this ship. The fragments shifted again, showing endless battles. The siege of Krail Fortress, the fall of Eridus Prime, the burning of Delta Crater. Each one the crew had already suffered through, but now they saw the end. Human soldiers falling, commanders giving last orders, ships exploding in final sacrifice. The crew shivered. Some looked away, unable to watch, but Rollo forced himself to stare. His chest felt heavy, his heart burning. "What do you want from us?" he asked. Kale's expression softened. His voice lowered. "To remember, to tell the galaxy the truth. Not that we vanished quietly, but that we endured. We became something more than flesh, more than blood. Our spirit was carved into steel, into fire, into war itself. That is the legacy of humanity." The core pulsed brighter, and the chamber shifted. Suddenly the crew was standing on Earth itself, or what remained of it. The sky was filled with ash, the ground broken and scarred. Human soldiers stood in the ruins, their faces gaunt, their weapons nearly empty. Yet their eyes still blazed with defiance. "This was our last day," Kyle said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "We knew we would not live, but we chose to fight. Not for victory, but so the galaxy would remember our spirit. Even if no one survived, the memory would remain." The crew felt the weight of it. They were no longer just explorers trapped in a relic. They were witnesses to the final heartbeat of an entire species. Kale stepped closer. His figure flickered, but his voice was steady. "Captain, you came here seeking treasure, technology, perhaps glory. But what you found is a burden. You have seen our last battles, our last breath. You must carry it." Rollo's throat tightened. He wanted to deny it, to say he was only a soldier following orders. But the truth was carved in his heart now. He had seen too much, felt too much. "What happens if we refuse?" he asked. The humans' eyes grew hard. The fragments around them flared, showing endless wars again. The screams returned, the blood, the fire. "Then the ship will never release you. You will fight forever, until you break, until your names join the countless dead." The crew paled, whispering prayers under their breath. Rollo clenched his fists, his voice cracked. "Then I accept. I will carry your memory. I will tell your story. The galaxy will remember humanity through us." The chamber went still. The fragments stopped spinning. The light of the core dimmed softly. Kale's figure began to fade. His final words echoed like thunder. "If humanity rises again, the galaxy will tremble. Remember that when you speak my name, remember that when you speak of Earth, remember that we were never weak, we were war." The light vanished. The chamber returned to silence. The crew stood shaking, staring at the empty space where the last human had spoken. Captain Rollo knew nothing would ever be the same. They had not just seen history, they had inherited it. And the warship, silent and waiting, was not done with them yet. The chamber of the last human memory faded into darkness. The glowing fragments vanished, leaving only the sound of the crew's ragged breathing. For a moment, Captain Rollo thought it was finally over. But then the floor shook harder than ever before. Dust rained from the ceiling. The ship itself was moving. "What's happening?" one officer cried, clutching the wall. Pava checked her scanner, her hands trembling. "The ship, it's not just remembering anymore, it's waking up." The Shadow's voice echoed from every wall, deep and unshakable. "The last memory has been shared. The burden has been passed. Now, the warship will rise." The crew ran into the corridor, but the ship sealed every door behind them, forcing them forward. The lights blazed bright red, alarms pulsed. The sound of engines long dead roared back to life, vibrating through their bones. Rollo's heart raced. "It's lifting off," he whispered. "It's leaving the moon." Outside, the dead moon shook as dust storms rose into the thin air. Rock crumbled and split as the massive warship began to tear itself free from the ground where it had slept for 1,000 years. Slowly, impossibly, the buried giant emerged. its hull glowing with fiery scars of reawakening. The Varnak crew clung to the railings as the ship tilted, rising higher. Engines the size of cities flared to life, their light brighter than any sun. The galaxy, silent for so long, felt the pulse of human power once more. In the command deck, the shadow appeared before them, standing tall, eyes glowing like stars. You opened the seal. You accepted the truth. Now this ship does not rest, it remembers its duty. What duty? Pava asked, her voice shaking. The shadow turned to the wide window of the deck where stars now glittered before them. To show the galaxy humanity's fire, to remind them that we were never gone, only waiting. The warship's guns shifted, ancient but alive, plates of steel unfolded like wings, revealing endless arrays of cannons, launch bays, and railguns. Each weapon powered itself, glowing with energy that should have been impossible after 1,000 years. The crew gasped, some falling to their knees. They had seen ships before, but nothing like this. This was not a vessel. It was a planet killer, a titan of war. Outside, fleets across nearby systems picked up the signal, alarms echoing through alien empires. Screens lit up in control rooms, messages sent in panic. Unknown vessel detected, human design. Impossible. Humans are extinct. It's rising. From the moon of Vera 9, we need reinforcements now. Rollo gripped the railing, staring at the endless expanse of weapons. His voice was low. One ship, and the whole galaxy fears it. The shadow looked back at him. They should, for this ship is not just steel. It is war made memory, and war never dies. The warship drifted free of the moon's gravity, floating in open space. Its engines burned brighter. The Varnak crew could feel the ship's hunger. It wanted battle. It longed to roar once more across the stars, but instead of firing, the shadow raised his hand. The weapons dimmed, folding back into silence. His eyes were cold, but calm. Not yet. The time is not now. The galaxy will tremble enough just knowing this ship has awakened. The crew exhaled in shaky relief, but the fear remained. If this ship chose war, no empire could stop it. Are we prisoners? One officer asked, his voice breaking. The shadow studied them. No, you are witnesses. You carry our story now. You will leave, but you will never be free of what you have seen. When you speak of this day, the galaxy will remember the name. They tried to erase human. The ship's engines slowed, the red lights dimmed to a steady blue. A hangar door opened, revealing a shuttle already waiting, prepared as if the warship itself had built it for them. Go, the shadow said. Tell them what you saw. Tell them what you felt. Tell them humanity is not dead but waiting. Rollo's crew hurried into the shuttle, hearts pounding. As the doors closed, Rollo looked back one last time at the shadow. What will you do now? He asked. The shadow's figure flickered. His voice was soft but filled with iron. I will wait for my people. And when they return, this ship will rise not in memory but in war. The shuttle launched, carrying the crew away from the warship. As they looked back through the small windows, they saw the massive vessel glowing in the darkness of space, silent but alive. Across the stars, messages already spread. Empires whispered in fear. Armies trembled. Old stories resurfaced, and the word human carried weight again. Captain Rollo sat in silence, his eyes locked on the giant warship fading behind them. He knew the truth now. Humanity was not gone. Their shadow still lived. Their fury still burned. And one day, their return would shake the galaxy. The warship floated among the stars, silent and waiting, its guns asleep, its heart alive. The galaxy had forgotten humanity, but now it remembered.